Oh, Vicki.
Oh,
Good to see you again. You probably know my background, but just as a refresher, I'm the chair of a public high school board. I've been a volunteer debate coach at 3 public high schools, at South Burlington, at Craftsbury Academy, and at Hazen Union. My wife teaches at a public school, and I've organized foreign exchange programs for over a dozen high schools in Vermont. I don't think there's many people that have given or devoted more time or care more about our public schools than I do, but I care about students above all, and our independent schools are a critical piece of our fabric and the quilt that supports our students. I had a few remarks I wanted to make. First, that I acknowledge that free competitive markets aren't perfect and that they can be inequitable, that students from wealthy families, such as our governor, have always been able to go to private schools, such as Buxton, where Governor Shumlin was able to attend. But there's an increasingly important role for the state when it comes to services as essential as education. We can all agree that our future depends on doing all we can to be certain that every single citizen has access to the education that best meets their needs and abilities, and public financing of schools is essential toward that end. The key question is, how do we ensure equity? That is a conversation that Vermont has never really had. But if bigger was better, then Lehman Brothers would still be selling stocks and Kodak would still be selling cameras. The fact of the matter is that bigger isn't always better. There is irrefutable evidence that students from poverty-stricken backgrounds are better served at small schools. For some students, South Burlington is a great high school, and for some students, Sharon Academy is a great high school, and for some students, Craftsbury Academy is a great high school. With Act 77, dual enrollment, and personalized learning plans, Vermont has at least begun to recognize that all schools cannot be all things to all students all the time. As our economy becomes more global and our technologies become more complex, our schools need to be more customized and more personalized, and our students need more choices and more opportunities, not fewer choices and fewer opportunities. The days when we could shackle a student to a chair in a classroom for 12 years has to be over.
Yeah.
Act 46 says its goal is to improve our schools by creating greater efficiency, quality, equity, transparency, and accountability. The Act 46 solution for achieving these goals is to get rid of local school boards, and with them a big piece of local democracy, and to provide Vermonters with education through an increasingly centralized system of public monopolies. If centralized public monopolies created quality and efficiency, Venezuela would be a modern miracle and an economic powerhouse. If we are honest with ourselves about the best ways to achieve efficiency and quality, then history has already answered that question. The answer is through choice and competition. History has taught us that town meetings and grassroots democracies work a lot better than central committees. I wanted to go on to say that Act 46 says its intent is not to get rid of smaller schools, and that is almost like saying a hammer isn't meant for pounding nails. If we are serious about efficiency, quality, and equity, and most importantly, preparing our students for a newer world, then Act 46 needs to be fixed. Here are some of the suggestions I would make. Number one, if we want efficiency, quality, and equity, then disposing of local school boards and squeezing out tuitioning towns and small schools isn't the answer. We should reward actual demonstrated improvements in efficiency, quality, accountability, and transparency, rather than compliance with some half-baked idea of a preferred structure. Maine attempted those preferred structures, and the result was literally no tax savings for the taxpayers, and we now have approximately 65 school districts trying to get divorced. We should extend all of the timelines by at least 1 year to enable communities to assess their options deliberately and carefully. We should support flexible implementation and de-emphasize the push for the so-called preferred structure so that communities may legitimately examine a variety of governance and structure. structures. We should provide communities with the resources to conduct an authentic analysis of the effectiveness of their current structure and explore a wide variety of options to meet the laudable goals of Act 46. We should look at the what we should do is look at the requirements of the guidance document for alternative structures that was issued by the Department of Education and ask yourself how a small committee of volunteers is ever going to find the time to put that kind of data and material together. It's asking for something that simply isn't possible. And in doing so, it does a disservice. We should be encouraging school districts to create innovative solutions and innovative models that could meet the goals of Act 46, not encouraging them to straitjacket themselves in some kind of preferred structure. We shouldn't be sending out sales representatives and calling them consultants for Act 46. Likewise, if we are serious about transparency and accountability, then we need to create a funding formula that the average Vermonter can understand. We need to create a standard template for disclosing revenue and expenses for schools and superintendent's offices that can be read and understood easily by the people whose money we are spending. Act 46 has nothing to do with either, and until that happens, all of our talk about accountability and transparency is just window dressing. In closing, I want to add one final comment. A young mixed-race girl, and these are all people I know, a young mixed-race girl who finds herself the target of racial slurs shouldn't have to go to a school board and beg to transfer to another school. The football player who is hazed and shamed by his teammates shouldn't be left with no choice but to return to the same fearful atmosphere. The young, aspiring artist with enormous passion and talent shouldn't be shackled to a school that has little or no art program. These students deserve more choices and more opportunities. It is sadly ironic that our political leaders, such as our governor, can take advantage of school choice and independent schools such as Buxton, but our less wealthy, working-class students don't have that doorway. To our governor, I would say, as Bob Dylan once said a long time ago, I think it's time to get out of the doorway and stop blocking the hall. We need to give our students as many choices and as many opportunities as we possibly can. And independent schools are an important part of that. Thank you.
We're not done with you yet.
Anyone see how come he needs debate teams? It's awesome, thank you, Dave.
Okay, first of all, Rick, anyone else? David, would you mind leaving your notes with us?
Oh, and by the way, Bob Dylan just won the Nobel Prize in Literature.
For his full body of work over his lifetime. But if you could leave your notes, because you are saying some important things and we'd like to be able to refer to them. David, I'd like to thank you for your hard work as a school board member and what you do, but also in your making yourself available to so many school boards to talk about Act 46 and the impact of Act 46 on local communities. I know you're doing that pro bono. It's all of your own time and of your own effort. And I know you came to Vernon and worked with us a great deal, and we're probably going to work with you a bit more in the future. But I'd like to thank you for all the efforts that you're doing on behalf of Vermont students. It's not just your school, or it's not just about your community, but you are looking at the entire state, and when you came to Vernon, that was quite obvious. And that's the important thing, and as Vicki said, it's important to remember, I've been doing school board work for 35 years, and I've been accused of not wanting to support public schools. That's not what this is about. This is about supporting children and putting them in the environment that works best for them. And David, I appreciate all your efforts in that vein, and for your traveling around the state and just what you're doing. Thank you.
All right, well, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
I have a question, Dave, about the actual time that a school board is taking to even try to decipher Act 46. In Lake Region District, they were meeting the school board 5 nights a week. I mean, they didn't have a home life, and they still can't figure it out. Could you give us some insight as to how school boards are even feeling about understanding Act 46?
Well, it's difficult and it's complicated for a wide variety of reasons. First of all, school boards themselves aren't actually the ones that are considering Act 46. We've created committees that are represented, where the districts are represented, but not necessarily the boards, particularly if it's a union school board. There's a lot of cross-pollination between the boards and these committees, but they're not exactly the same. So communications is a bit of a problem. One of the things that Act 46 presumably intends is that, in particular, where we can't do a preferred structure, but have to do an alternative structure, that we would engage in multiple conversations with a variety of districts. But one conversation with a couple of districts is incredibly time-consuming. If, for example, Orleans Southwest was to try to reach out to Orleans Central, that would create another new complex conversation beyond the one that's already occurring in Orleans Southwest and the one that we're already having with schools from Caledonia County. So it's to think that we are going to have all of these conversations and prepare all of the information, the new guidelines from the Agency of Education asks for and have everything in place by July 1st of 2017 is utterly insane. It's just utterly insane. And what it is it creates the impetus to make some very bad decisions about perhaps the most important resource in our state.
We're trying to force decisions that aren't even ready to be made.
And decisions that maybe should never be made in the first place. Sometimes if it ain't broke, you shouldn't fix it. And quite frankly, Craftsbury Academy ain't broke. It's wonderful. It's working very well. I would say let it be.
Exactly. All right.
Just wanted to point out that Bob got the Nobel Prize for literature, not for his singing.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Christina